So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Beyond Checkout, brought to you by Trina Technologies. So, the purpose of today's masterclass is to help you streamline your business journey from placing an order to delivering it, and to assist the startup ecosystem in areas such as product development, platform approaches, and the decision-making process of build versus rent. So, Trina Technologies plays a role in tech enabler, aiming to be a catalyst for change in the digital transformation space. Our expertise lies in propelling organizations towards tech-driven success. Joining us today are Mr. Anup Davare, CTO of Hector Beverages, and Mr. Amol Bhanushali, CEO of Atrina Technologies. With an expansive career spanning over 16 years, Anup is a seasoned technology leader with an adept problem solver. His forte lies in strategic planning, building system architectures from ground up, and spearheading product development. Notably, he has an innate ability to apply first principles to problem solving and excels in creating synergies through the integration of cloud native, mobile first, and analytics embedded platforms. Before his role at Hector Beverages, Anup gained valuable experience at renowned organizations like Marico and Persistent Systems. And Mr. Amol Bhanushali started his career in 2008 in information technology and service industry. Today, he stands as one of the proud founding members of Atrina Technologies, a company founded in 2016, is now serving clients globally. With Atrina, Amol has expanded into India, Japan, Dubai, and Ethiopia, establishing offices and working teams. With expertise in custom enterprise softwares, ERP solutions, mobile app development, and e-commerce, Amol has been able to serve over 35 customers in the last 4 years. With the motto of Think Global and Act Local, Amol Bhanushali is on a path to creating one of the most trustworthy information technology companies, Atrina Technologies. So, moving forward, we'll be jumping into the topic.
Yeah. Thank you, Dara, for the introduction.
Yeah, thank you.
We're so glad to have all of the audiences here. And we see there are a lot of audiences from SMEs, and we are very interested in having a conversation with them. Just one second. Hello.
Next.
So, Mr. Anup, you can take over.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I hope I'm audible to all of you. Yeah. So, we'll begin with how to solve a business problem, right? Finally, as business leaders, our primary job is to solve the business problems. And when I say business problem, I don't mean a particular issue, right? It is the business use case that our organizations expect us to solve, or some of us, we being founders, would like to solve, correct? So that way, it becomes important for us to really understand how exactly a business problem has to then translate it into a technology problem and then provide the technology solution. Technology is just one part of the overall puzzle, but mostly the way the world right now works is that it is kind of a fabric that is across your business. So how do we go about it is one of the most critical things we as business leaders do. So let's talk about that to begin with, right? Yeah, we can move to the next slide. Right. So how do we solve the business problem? We solve the business problem by understanding the business, right? Unless you understand the problem, you can't solve the problem. And when I say understanding the problem, I mean, who should understand that problem? Every stakeholder needs to understand the problem that we are trying to solve. A lot of times there is a lot of gap between where the problem is getting originated, or what the original idea of the founder, and what is communicated to the person who is actually materializing that idea. And that is where a lot of gap lies. And more importantly, with everything available almost ready-made and maybe half cooked, we are losing our ability to actually apply the first principles to these business cases. So when I say first principles is basically, and most of us would know what what do we mean by applying first principles, is to break the problem to its core, uh, and then look at the solutions. Uh, you have to be problem focused. We can move to the next slide. Yeah. Right. So design thinking. Design thinking is so. If you ask me, there are many definitions on the internet, and one can go through that. The way I understand design thinking is basically falling in love with the problems. Okay, you fall in love with the problem, you don't fall in love with the solutions. That's how you arrive at the right solutions for the problems. Um,
That's very
so
interesting.
yeah, right. Um, so uh, other way to put it is basically do not pick the hammer until you see a nail. It's like uh, quite cliched, but once you have a hammer in your hand, every problem is a nail for you, right? Because we know that particular thing, that particular solution, we try to apply that to every problem, and that's where things go wrong. Uh, and you really have to keep some of these solutions aside that you already know. And why do we pick the hammer? Because we have the hammer, right? What does that mean? That means there is a comfort in known things, and there is some fear element in unknown. And the first reaction to any human is to apply the heuristics and uh, and give some solution that is in the realm of known solutions, right? uh, and I am inviting you to uh, deliberate more on this in terms of, is that the right way of doing? I know there has to be the speed of decision making is important, but the cost of the decision that we take as leaders is much higher than some of the other decisions taken down the line. And then again, there are two types of decisions, right? The decisions that can easily be reversed and new decisions can be taken, and there are a few decisions where the implications of going wrong is quite high. So you have to, so for those decisions which are very business critical and they're not easy to roll back, we have to really fall in love with the problem and not the solution. uh, Another aspect of this is, what is your role, right? Every person should ask in that particular product development or project, like, what is my role here? Am I a chemist or a doctor? So what do you mean by that, right? Let's say a patient comes to you with symptoms. A doctor would then understand the symptoms and then would do his or her own analysis. Uh, and just talking about doctor's mindset, if you are solving that problem, you would do surveys. You would go beyond the words and the symptoms that are just being uh, told by the particular
Yeah, yeah,
uh, person, right?
yeah.
So that becomes very critical. Otherwise, a simple algorithm will also replace a doctor, but it doesn't, because it goes beyond that. Goes beyond the symptoms. So and and a chemist would just say, okay, fine, this is the order that I'm getting, and I'll just service this. So this applies to all the service companies, people who are executing that particular idea. You should know the essence of that particular problem, what exactly we are trying to solve. You should be aligned to the purpose of that particular solution. Then only the right uh, implementation happens, in my opinion. And last part is, don't always think incrementally and constraint forward. Many of the smaller organizations would have some system going on, some Excel automation somewhere, some small
Mm,
application
mm,
running.
mm.
And because that system is already available, we do not go beyond uh, that particular system. We'll always do a patchwork in terms of, how do I do this in this system? And that's okay for smaller problem. But mo- at every time you add some new features to that solution which was not designed to that to handle that particular scale or do that particular activity, you
Hmm.
add technical debt to the problem. It becomes uh, less and less manageable and effective beyond that point, right? So
Correct.
don't think in terms of incremental changes and constant forward always. You have to take a call uh, to to basically abandon that old system and maybe again go back to the first principles and start building it again. And one thing that we should ensure when we do that is always have new people in the team when you do that. If the same team who had built the earlier solution builds a new solution, you get more or less the same solution
Output.
again, which is right now not working for you. It might be working for when it was built, but for your current business, it's not working, right? So that call has to be
Correct.
taken. You always should be on a lookout in terms of when do I retire this and how do I retire this particular system for my business, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, we can move to the next. Right. Correct. So this all is fine, but how now we get into the how part of it, and some of the choices that we make as business leaders. So paradox of choice. There's a very nice TED talk. If you get time, you search paradox of choice and
Sure.
you'll get this TED talk by Barry Schwartz. Uh, what he argues there is with the modern world, uh, there there is plethora of choice for each and everything in your life, not just personal life, but also when it comes to technology, your work, platform that
Okay.
you choose. There are multiple options available there, that there's always a choice to make. And all those choices exist because they actually solve some problem, or they provide some unique aspect to that particular problem, right?
Correct.
Mm.
uh, what does that also means conversely is that uh, you you can never have the best choice or the perfect choice. You will always feel that okay, I've made this choice, but something else is missing which was available in the other option that I did not take. So we can move to the next slide. So how does it impact the product development? Yeah. Yes. So now we are entering into the realm of the product development side of the business, and I would now open it to all of you for each point that we'll discuss from now on in terms of choices. If you have any thoughts regarding that, please jump in, unmute yourself, and put your point forward, and we can have a quick discussion on that. Uh, so I was talking about the paradox of choice. There is no perfect choice, but there are several wrong ones. What does that mean? I was just talking about having several choices, and they exist because they are actually serving some purpose, right? So that
Hmm. Hmm.
that just
Correct.
means that there's no perfect choice, but there can be several wrong choices, and we'll discuss about that. So the product development requires a lot of decisions to be taken by you. Uh, you be it a business, you be it on business side or the technology side. And in my opinion, technology is too important to be just left to the IT departments as such. So unless the business leaders understand some bit of it, why it's being done, uh,
Correct.
and having some ability to question some of the decisions that are being taken, um, it is. I mean, I would say that that's the ideal scenario rather than making a negative statement. I would say that's the ideal scenario when business leaders understand some bit of it in terms of why, on a very high level, why part of it, how part of it is not required, but why part of it, and why those choices are being made. So let's talk about some of these choices. I would urge all of you to pitch in wherever you have some point of view.
And
Okay.
if you all want to contribute, please raise your hand. I'll unmute you.
Yeah. Right. So the first dilemma we'll talk about build versus buy versus rent. Okay. Uh, so if you're working on a project, you have at least these three options, and I would say more than these. Build means you are developing that solution for yourself. You own the code, you own the IP, and you own all the problems that are coming with it. Correct? Buy model is more and more, it's less prevalent these days, because everyone wants to rent, uh, uh, make you rent something. So what do I mean by that? So for example, take a case of ERP systems, and I'm not pointing out a specific ERP system, but be it ERP systems from Microsoft, SAP, Oracle, all of these do not want you to buy the licenses, correct? The perpetual licenses. They want you to go on the cloud model, the software as service model. That is the rent part of it, correct?
Correct.
So, how do you take these decisions? So there are a set of considerations that can be made to make an informed decision about this. Okay. And again, on the decision making part itself, one key aspect of decision making is the documentation of decision making. Uh, the with the options that are available with you, after a few months, you will not remember why you picked that particular option. Or people move always from one organization to other organization. The organization deserves to have this knowledge in the repository, why things were done the way they were done, right?
Yeah, correct.
Because there is a risk of making the same mistake, because the new people would not know the rationale, or you will sometime forget the rationale behind not taking a particular step and doing it in a specific manner. That's why that documentation of the thought process behind the decision making is very, very critical. And uh, in my opinion, the process of decision making is much more important than the results of those decisions, because results have bearing of so many other factors as well, not just that decision, market situations and all, correct? So, and a very poor decision can also result in can also give you great results. Does not mean that the decision itself was correct, or more importantly, the process by which the decision was taken was correct, right? So what is that process that we are talking about here? Build versus buy versus rent.
Yeah.
So take an example of a typical manufacturing company, or a house of brand kind of a situation. Uh, they they need ERP system, correct? So would you build, buy, or rent the ERP system? And we are talking about SME, small companies, and they just want to record their production somewhere and have some kind of inventory. They can do it in Excel. Uh, most of the companies try to do it in Tally, but Tally is not a great tool in terms of the inventory management, correct? But coming back to this point, nobody would suggest you to build an ERP system to your need when you're starting the business. You'll always buy or rent it, right? So how complex it is for you to build it, and how trivial is your system for which you are building it. For example, HR management solutions, ERPs, great softwares are available. Even the software organization, software development companies should not build these softwares. They are mature to that point where there is no build, correct? So where do you build? You build where there is a business. So you're manufacturing. So for example, a, a brand organization, their their key differentiation when it comes to business is not their manufacturing. Manufacturing is trivialized in many sense now. Uh, the distribution part of it, marketing, that is where the key differentiation comes. So then, do you build your own distribution software, or you again buy something off the shelf, depends on some of the other criterias. And what are those criterias again? One is, so for example, um, you are building a system where you are thinking that 10,000 people would use it in your organization. That's your plan, even your customers, everyone. Now, if you go for a rent model, rent kind of arrangement, that is software as service, and if those licenses are per user licenses that you are paying for on a monthly basis, that becomes beyond a point unmanageable for you, and then the P&L doesn't look good. Initially, it might look good, but as in when you start growing, your P&L would not look good because there would be more efficient solutions available uh, for you to then consider. For example, building it for your own, because you can do that and you have full control on it. The
Yeah.
way you are doing the business, the way your distribution is set up, all of it you can do it for yourself. So that's one case. Another consideration. So one consideration is how many users and P&L impact and all. Second consideration is where exactly you are in that journey.
Hmm.
Um, uh, some of the evolved companies can actually have softwares for, let's say, supplier management portals and all. There are some great tools available in the market. But if you're just starting, can you really afford that? Can you really utilize all those features that are there in that particular platform? Probably not. Then you get it built for yourself for first 5 6 years, and then and know a scale where you would start exploring some of the tools that are more advanced. So
Hmm.
yeah, so these are some of the considerations when you make this particular call. Anybody wants to add anything here before we move to the next one?
Hello.
Yes, Karan.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, are there any specific criteria for this? So let's say if I want to take a decision that at a current stage I should build or I should buy or I should rent. So are there any some criteria or something like that which can help me to take the decisions?
That's a very good question, and we were talking about that, right? That one is you have to look where your business is, and what is commercially more viable. If, let's say, you have enough opportunity to invest for future and have a solution which will be useful for you in next couple of years as well, you can go ahead with that.
Hmm.
But but in in our world, those ideal situations are rare, right? You are always, you on that particular quarter in that particular financial year, you want to maximize your investments. So
Yeah,
always ensure that you solve the immediate business problem, because if you bring a solution which is very futuristic but is not solving your immediate problem, the adoption is not going to happen. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right. uh,
understood.
and I have seen this trend of many solutions which were always used to be built in house, uh, great options emerging for those solutions as well in the rent space. uh, they might not be commercially viable, but this is a very natural progression where more and more products and platforms would be available at your disposal. Um, and that doesn't mean that always that is the right choice. Just because there is a platform available for that particular activity doesn't mean that you should take that call. It depends. The answer to your question is really depends on your particular case and the situation you are in. Right?
Understood.
And I think country like India, I would say, we are right now, we are progressing that we are having an, luxury or option for having a multiple platform. But if we see a past, 10 years, like before 10 years or maybe 15 years, like the tally is like tally ERP, and then you have a accounting is like, but then the Zoho came in, Zoho CRM, Zoho accounts, and there are other tools have came in, and they were very specific for specific industry. So now we are seeing a lot of people are coming up with a platform which are very specific to industry. Even if it is a manufacturing, then it will go to very specific industry. that we are providing so and so platform for very specific industry.
Right, exactly. General purpose versus very specific softwares.
Yeah.
Another consideration, and we'll talk about it in the cloud as well, in the cloud section as well,
Yeah.
is the autonomy of your operations.
Yeah.
Sometimes if the business case is very critical, you do not want to depend entirely on an organization that is providing that particular service for you if it is core to your business, right? I mean, there are many e-commerce platforms available for you to get started immediately on D2C e-commerce.
Yeah.
An organization who wants to have e-commerce as their main play, can they afford to go with these uh, solutions like Shopify and all for their business? I would argue no. They might use a platform in the background and rather than doing it entirely from the scratch, but they would not go with this platform service, right? For example, Nykaa, when they built the business, they always had a vision that they want to build a online distribution kind of a business, the e-commerce business.
Yeah.
It is very different from let's say PNG having their own web store.
Yeah.
PNG can have Shopify or whatever they want to have, correct? Because their core business is not that. If your core business itself is online distribution, you can't rely on someone else to provide that core solution to you.
Correct,
It's then becomes extremely difficult to then scale, right?
You are dependent on them.
And then I was talking about minimum 3, right? We'll just quickly touch upon that. Let's say you're building something, right? For your own. But the entire API economy is such that there is an API available for almost everything. Let's say you want to run some AI machine learning load on your data. You can completely externalize it, give it to some agency, just give them the data. They will run the algorithms and models on that, and you can just access the results over APIs. And that also gives you and especially where you do not know how successful that particular um, uh, idea is going to be. This is a great option to do because then you don't unnecessarily hire the skills required for that immediately. And it may not work, and there might be better solutions available because it is a very emerging kind of a technology. You have your own product, but just integrate the services that are available in the market. And then if one service is not working for you, you can go to the other service, which is cheaper or better. And nothing much actually changes in terms of your own architecture because your inputs and outputs are pretty much set. It is the processing that you are outsourcing, right? So that's the another thing. We can move to the next point, right? Inhouse versus outsource. This is now if you choose to say, let's say, build it for ourselves rather than renting or buying. You again, a smaller organization, how the software development itself, unfortunately, has become a complex topic now because earlier couple of and then it's simplified to an extent, but still it is way too complicated for smaller organization to have their own development teams, unfortunately. Why am I saying that? Earlier, if you want to build a small software workflow or mobile applications, uh, a few developers, 2, 3 developers were enough. But the way world is progressing, you would now need someone who would know Docker, someone who would basically the DevOps part of it, someone who would know security part of it. Everything is API based, so that layer becomes different. So the number of skills required are high, and then that is the reason people started talking about full stack developers and all. But still, I would argue that the number of roles you just have to maintain in your organization, especially if you're a growing organization, are not very sustainable because people will use your organization as a training ground, and they would move to some other organization. You will be in that perpetual cycle of continuously hiring the people. So having a couple of developers in-house is always a great idea, but building that entire team to begin with might not be great idea in my opinion. Once you attain that scale and that product becomes essential to your organization, by all means you can insource some of these developers. Benefit that you get by outsourcing this is expertise in terms of design and architecture,
Yeah.
uh, ability to add more people overnight almost. All of that is not possible for a non-IT organization. So that's another consideration. Somewhere down the line, if you want to completely insource, you certainly can do that. But consider this as the cloud model of development, right? The what cloud does to the infrastructure in terms of getting you started quickly. Uh, a good outsourcing firm can do it for you to building that solution for you. You
Hmm.
can only outsource the activities, you cannot outsource the responsibility finally, right? So they can only do that much for you. They don't beyond the point. You still have to have the ownership of everything, but they can simplify and speed up things for you for sure. Huh?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. And yeah, expertise obviously. Next one, please. Right. I just would want to demystify some of these things for you. And I know this session is kind of a very level 100 kind of a session, and it's by design, it's like that, because we I would want all of us to focus on basics again, always come back to those basics and then again start from there, because we lose sight of that always when we talk about all the great new technologies.
Yeah.
So a quick visit back to cloud and why we started. Now it has become so synonymous to everything that we do. We don't even think why the heck we started with cloud. What was the uh, pre-cloud era kind of thing, right? So a quick focus on that what cloud has done for us. And you must be if some of you are running the business, you must have heard hybrid cloud, multi-cloud and all. I'll just quickly demystify some of these terms for you. When we say cloud, we primarily say public cloud. Okay, public clouds are uh, Google Cloud, AWS, Amazon, and there are a few others as well, like Oracle, Red Hat has their own public cloud. And then there are private clouds. Private clouds are more like they give cloud-like flexibility, but they are specifically set for you. Hybrid cloud is an interesting proposition, and uh, one is so. What do you mean by hybrid cloud? It means that uh, you use multiple clouds in your organization, not let's say just AWS or Google or Microsoft Azure. You use more than one. Why do you use more than one? Is to one. There are two primary considerations in my opinion for using multiple clouds. One is to use the best possible feature on that particular cloud. Every cloud has their own strengths and weaknesses. You choose what is best on that particular cloud, and then you start using that feature. Let's say uh, the warehousing solution, just as an example.
Yeah.
Let's say Google BigQuery is a great warehouse
Yeah.
compared to some of the other warehouses, let's say, and you can only get Google BigQuery on Google Cloud. So you go ahead and uh, start using Google BigQuery on Google Cloud, and then some of the other features are better on let's say Azure platform as service features are better on Azure, or Lambda functions are better on AWS. You go ahead and start implementing those features on those clouds. So that is the first consideration for hybrid cloud, that you use best on each of these offerings. And smaller companies uh, might have a challenge in doing that. So you can start with one cloud actually. The second consideration is lock-in and cost. If you have multiple clouds, you build architecture in such a way that you can easily move from one cloud to another. If one cloud has any regulatory issues in India, or they have pricing that is not sustainable anymore, or you just have to negotiate on the pricing, right?
Yeah.
And that's our job in terms of ensuring that we we get things at the right price. So that is another consideration, not having to lock in into one particular cloud. We talked about private cloud, public cloud, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, and co-location is not a new concept at all. It's kind of your data centers, but instead of you having your own data centers, you use a co-location where they manage. So it's what is a good analogy for it?
Co-working space.
Co-working spaces, right? So co-working spaces are where the ACs, electricity, all the basic amenities are provided by the co-working space company, and then you take care of your employees there, right?
Yeah.
HR is still yours, and then you ensure the well-being of your employees there. That is the same thing with co-location, where you have um, a location which is managed by a very professional company in terms of power backups, cooling, and all the basic facilities in terms of networks, availability of network there. But you buy your own servers or rent servers there as well,
Yeah.
and you manage the entire servers. Somewhere in your journey, you would find that the cloud itself, while it was earlier quite cheaper and time to market, because it is always paramount, cloud was the best option available for you. But somewhere in your journey, it can very well happen that taking that capex and using the hardware uh, uh, to beat dead is much more economical than always going with the cloud kind of solution. Okay? Any thoughts on this by anyone?
Anup, I have a question here. Like for SMEs, what could be the the best thing to go on a cloud, like a plain cloud or a hybrid model or a multi-cloud? Because I think this like multi-cloud or co-location is like the larger banks or these kind of institution should have requirement or.
Whenever you know at any given point of time that a particular solution that you have deployed on cloud is going to be uh, used for next 4 or 5 years at least,
Hmm.
and you generally know that this is the scale at which the user is going to grow, that's a good case to evaluate at that point of time
Okay.
to to move that particular service to a co-location, because it can be cheaper. But cloud then comes with its own services. If you're using all those services, it might be difficult. But all these co-location rack spaces and virtualization companies, they are also coming up with great features that can match some of these public clouds. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
But that is where you should start the consideration as a smaller organization, that one, if your scale demands that; two, if that solution is quite stable now,
Hmm.
then maybe it can be moved to a co-location and you can save some cost. So
Yeah.
it's more of a cost
Then,
decision, in my
so
opinion.
then I think this decision making is based on how much price I can or how much cost I can save.
Yes, exactly. That's one of the primary considerations. There are a few other considerations, but I would say uh, everything else, I mean, price outweighs everything else when it comes to this decision.
Correct. Correct.
Uh, right? Yes.
Yeah. We can move to next.
Right. So I don't want to get into details of this, okay? But some of you are product owners and all, and you must be hearing that we will do microservices architecture, monoliths are old and all, right? So Dara has asked a question. Let's all of us
Yeah.
try to answer.
How many people are submitting there?
I think 10 people have submitted so far.
Wow.
11. 13. We'll stay here for one more minute and then we'll move to our topic. Awesome. I think 21 people have answered. 12
Okay.
are saying microservices are better, 4 are saying monoliths are better, and 6 people are saying I don't know what these are, right? See, the correct answer was not an option here at all, okay? And we will talk about that. But I'm happy to know that 6 people are there who do not know these things, and we'll talk quickly a bit about microservices and monolith. It will help you whenever those discussions would come in front of you.
Yeah.
We can, yeah, we'll end the poll now. 23 people have already answered, and I will share the results as well, so people should know. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So, on this slide, I'm not really here to educate you in depth in terms of microservices and monolith. The point I'm trying to make here is, in technology, there are always flavor of the season. Okay. You don't have to fall for that. It's like fast fashion brands. Many things would come, many of them would not be really very useful. The basic still remains there. You have to focus on that and focus on your business problem. None of the architecture is going to solve your or or basically change the way um, you, I would say overnight would just bring something new to your business. It probably would not. It's like once in a decade kind of thing. Like ChatGPT comes and it just changes the entire landscape, right? Uh, but otherwise, these trends would come and go. And people would then jump onto those. And it's not that those are bad. So, for example, now let's talk about quickly why I'm saying that before I'm giving too much context before discussing the specific case. Microservices. So uh, the way all the majority of the systems are built is that you have a application server, right? You have a database server.
Yeah.
At its core, it's called as a 3-tier architecture, right?
Yeah.
And then there is a client who is accessing it. So, and then there are complexities in terms of you have multiple servers, multiple application servers. If too many users are using it, load balancing and all. But that's typically called as a monolith solution, where you have one or more application servers, database servers, interacting with each other, and then users are using these via load balancer. You call it as a monolith. A few years back, microservices became very, very popular. How microservices are essentially different from a monolith? In a way, uh, a microservice is a self-sustaining unit. So it has its own application server, its own database server, correct? Every small service has ability to scale independently of the other solution. So your monolith is also based on all the APIs and all, but microservices goes beyond APIs, which says that I am a self-sustaining unit completely, which can be scaled up. For example, let's say uh, a, a very crude example I will give. On Amazon, lightning deals are being viewed at a very fast pace when there is a great Indian Amazon sale, or on Flipkart, they have big billion days and all, right?
Correct.
So the APIs that are in most use, right? If you have a microservice architecture, what can happen is those APIs, you can only scale that API, right? Independent of all the other APIs, all the other services. For example, Lightning Deals is the API that has maximum hits. you can run it separately, you can scale it separately. And if Lightning deal goes down, that API goes down, your all the other services are running because it's not on the same server with all the other services. That's essentially the microservices. So it's a great idea, right? That I have a separate setup, entirely separate setup, self-sustaining setup for each and every service that I provide. And for business people, you can consider this as any business service, correct? Be it something in supply chain, procurement, maybe bidding, right? All of that. So this is a great idea. However, there are trade-offs with everything in technology. There is a trade-off. What is the trade-off with microservices versus monolith? The trade-off is for doing any complex task which involves multiple services, each service will talk to the other service. That means the number of servers getting involved in responding to one user action can go in tens and like more than 10, 11 sometimes, and it depends on the complexity of your application. So people ignore that. Everybody thought that monolith is for the past and let's only do microservices, and people failed miserably there because one, it is much more complicated to build it, much more complicated to then maintain and sustain this particular architecture. Even if you search Amazon Prime Video, microservices versus monolith, something like that. You just search
I
microservices,
think they
monolith.
recently moved from microservice to monolithic.
Exactly. So the AWS who sells your serverless and all, serverless again is a concept which says that you don't need a server. It's kind of a microservice kind of architecture, where they are selling and promoting your serverless so much. Amazon themselves, they also have come back to an architecture which is monolith because that makes more sense. So it does not mean that microservices are bad, but contrary to what people earlier believed that the days of monolith are over, that's also not true. There are trade-offs that you need to understand. And that's the point I really wanted to make, the larger point, that do not immediately fall for the flavor of the season in the technologies. See what if that technology really is useful technology or platform or design principle is really useful for you. Another such example was SQL versus NoSQL, big data. Most of you must have heard about this. There was a time when each and every project that was being initiated was done on NoSQL without giving any consideration, thinking that SQL days are over. Far from the case, SQL is still thriving. The reason because the relational data and the consistency, where the high consistency is required, and I'll not get into detail, but what there is no replacement for the SQL. NoSQL simply cannot do what SQL can do. End of the day, it's not that you can't achieve some of those things in NoSQL, but it's never as efficient as what a SQL system can give you. So yeah, so the point I want to make is do not fall for the flavor of the season here. Any comments here before we move to the next one?
No, I think you clearly mentioned like the pros and cons, why it is required, and where to be alert and take a cautious decision. If we can't take a decision, take an expert advice before jumping into and I think that, and as a business
Exactly.
user, and as a business user, I think the business guy can ask a logical question that why microservice and why monolithic, and if tech guy can explain that in most of the logical way, I think then it makes sense to take a decision.
I completely agree with Amol. Okay. And how do you know if you're talking to an expert or not? When it comes to technology, if that person is not able to if that person is not able to explain you that particular concept like that, like you explain it to a 9-year 10-year-old kid, then probably the person who is talking doesn't really know much about it. Okay, we're not talking about really nuclear reactors and some kind of so it's these things can be explained in a very simple manner if the answer that you get is because it is new and it is the future, then that person doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
Then that's your red alert. If that person is not able to explain you, probably you should seek more advice, go for second opinion, third opinion.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Next.
Yeah, next slide, please. Right. This is my one of my favorite topics. Uh, how many of you know agile development? What is agile development, or just being agile in the business? Quite a uh, overused term these days, right?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that most of you know agile, and what is happening prevalently, and this is my observation, anecdotal evidence. There is no study that I'm referring here. Is that in the name of agile, people are shooting from the hip. So SFH is shooting from the hip, right? So when those cowboys used to cross each other and then they used to get into a fight,
Yeah.
instead of aiming to a problem or aiming to a person, they just used to shoot from that. That's basically when you take reckless decisions, don't put any thought. That is when you say you're shooting from the hip, right? And that's what is happening in the name of agile. Agile does not mean you do not do your due diligence, you do not put enough thought, you just do something and see if it works or not. If not, you try something else. That's not agile. Okay. That's shooting from the hip. Unless you already have a plan for, okay, I'll try this. If this doesn't work, this is what I will try. If there is no method to the madness, it's complete madness, right? It's not agile.
Yeah.
Yeah. So be aware of that. Some of you being business owners and business leaders, uh, please be aware of this. Number one thing that you can do to make a project successful is to give clarity. That's our job. Projects fail when we do not give enough clarity. Being agile does not mean not giving clarity and just leaving it to some.
Yeah.
You leave it to your next level. Whenever you leave something to your next level, that, and I'm talking about the business decisions, I'm not talking about day-to-day thing. Yes, trust them for the decision that needs to be taken at their level. But as soon as you leave a decision to be taken at your level to the next level leaves it to the next level, and it goes to the person who has no option but to show some result, and that is always subpar. So take the decisions you must take, even if those are difficult, even if you don't have the complete picture at that point of time. Take the decisions, admit that this is what I think with the information I have, and give the clarity rather than just leaving it dangling.
Yeah.
I mean, leaving anything to the assumption of a developer is always a very
So,
bad
Anup,
idea.
what I generally recommend is like here in this case, like agile, or they want to go in a other methodology. Like you should know the scope. Like when the decision is not being taken, is like there is a huge scope, or scope is very ambiguous. So people will not take a decision that, okay, there are 8 line items, 5 line items, we have a clarity, 3 line item, we don't have a clarity. We can limit the scope. Okay, this is what we are limiting the scope. Let us agree upon it and start the execution.
Right.
Right. That's where
Right.
that's where the stakeholder management plus the convincing people that, okay, you need to limit the scope, because business people will come with a lot of fancies and whimsies features. They will need it, but then as a product side or as a engineering guy, we should tell them, boss, we need to limit the scope in order to deliver something.
Yeah, I agree with you, Amol. And when someone would come up with a lot of bells and whistles without really thrashing out the core of the system really in detail, uh, that again is not a great sign for project success.
Yeah.
And when Amol said that you should give very detailed requirements, it doesn't mean that you should know everything
Yeah.
on the first day, but your broader idea, your MVP, that should be clear. And then you take the feedback from your end users and keep evolving the system. That's the right way of doing it. But the balance has to be there. Sometimes what Amol said is very true. Extremely broad areas are directly made into development and then are uh, given into the production.
Yeah.
If you are if you consider yourself an extremely lucky person, that might work. Okay.
Correct. Otherwise, it will not work. Definitely.
But their chances of failure are quite high with that
Yeah.
kind of an approach.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think. Go ahead next.
Right. How are we doing on time, Amol? Oh, I think we have already gone past. We'll quickly wrap it up. LLMs are large language models, but as Dhara says, it is lifelong learning mindset, and I like that. Okay, um, because both things has to go hand in hand, and uh, be really aware of what skills are required for you now and for the future. Same goes with the softwares, that you can't really have something only for future and let's without addressing the today's requirements. So everybody is trying to find the answers to this. I also don't have any, but be mindful and take some cautious informed decisions. Try to take some informed decisions when it comes to hiring the skills for your teams. How I don't know how many of you have checked the feature for advanced data analysis in ChatGPT. If you have a paid version, do check that. It has potential to completely eat the data analysis jobs. Right?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Next one. We'll wrap it up and we'll see if anybody has anything else to add to. Auto management, I think we talked about it here and there. We'll skip this part. If anybody has specific requirements in terms of how order management needs to be managed, I don't have a silver bullet, but I can tell my views on it and we can connect separately on that. Okay.
Yeah.
And next. Right. Takeaways. Quickly, we'll close this. Do not jump to the solutions, understand the problems. And in many ways, I'm reminding this to myself. Okay, I'm not trying to preach here.
Yeah.
Have common purpose, shared understanding, and let that percolate to the last level where the work is actually happening. Process of decision making is more important than the results of the decisions itself. It is very, very critical. Many people do not understand that, do not judge the decisions basis the results of the decisions. The decisions should be evaluated on the process of the decision making. Don't wait for a perfect solution, but document your decisions. Right?
Yeah.
It is extremely critical to document your decisions so that you can go back and ensure that why those decisions were taken. Have those decision notes. Typically, we call it decision notes, right? I think it is a standard term. I have this habit because I have very poor memory, so I always write down why any big decision. I write down the rationale behind it, and rely on experts. Be open to learn new terms, new terminologies, but no one can solve your business the way you can solve. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Noob, for walking us through the entire session.
Great session, great energy.
Yes, and before we conclude, I would like to Amol to talk about Value Network a bit. So this is our inaugural event for creating a community at the end of the day. So if Amol, can you talk about?
Yeah, so I'll quickly summarize like why we are doing this. There has to be a purpose behind what we are doing. It's not that people are doing, so we also must do. Like I was going through a book which is called Innovator's Dilemma, where there was a really great concept which is value network. So value network is basically, in the ecosystem wherever you are, working, like in a business or you are in IT or let's say example, there is a business who has been, into vendor management, then they have a different software vendors, then they have different kind of a customers. So it becomes a value network, and that value networks actually help each other, to progress, on a next level. Now, when one organization wants to, grow, it has to come out of that value network, and then, it can grow. Otherwise, because all the, like, from the purchase to customers to the raw material, the pricing, the communication happens in the same way, because that's the same value network. That's why it's called value and then the network. So that network creates a certain value. What I thought of that, by after working with a lot of SMEs, like there are people like Anup who are really, really expert on a business side plus the tech side. I thought of that, why can't this knowledge can be shared across these SME founders who are genuinely doing business, but they are really stuck at, how to take decision when it comes to technology, because it's really new. Sometimes they have really done a bad decision, and sometimes some vendors have done a bad project implementation, and that's where they really fear of implementing technology. They might have a question on a pricing, that if I'm doing and invest, if I'm expensing on a technology side, whether it will be marked as an expense or whether it will be an investment. These are the, I mean the overall dilemma of right now. I can see there are a lot of SMEs, founders, and the people who are handling the business who are facing. In that regards, I thought of to have a concept called collective wisdom, and then we rename it to a value network. So collective wisdom is basically, we have a experience, knowledge, and all. We can share it, and we can build a community. You can support each other to move to a next level. And that's where I think this whole idea came into picture. Anup has agreed, do the first session. I really appreciate about it, to trusting us, and being a part of this journey. Really helpful. I think that's it from my side.
So thank you all for coming. I'll send you a link for Value Network. You all can join it on this call.
Yeah, and I think you are going to have a further updates.
Yes,
and,
all these
right?
updates will be sent via mail.
So it's not just you are building a community; the community has to get something out of it, right?
Correct.
And thank you, Dara, for taking all the efforts arranging this. It's not easy to begin something new.
Yeah, yeah.
So many unknowns. So yeah, thank you. Good job.
For coming on the session.
Yeah, thank you everyone.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
One second. Ended.
Session end किया.